All right, it says we're live, and so I'm going to assume that that is the case. It's Wednesday night. It's 8:30 p.m. I'm Chris Peak. This is the Panther-Lair Show here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Jim Hammett from Panther-Lair.com will be joining us in a moment, but of course, I'll tell you all the nitty-gritty details that you need to know to make your life as a Pitt fan more worthwhile and satisfying and fulfilling, like going to Panther-Lair.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. You want to keep up on all the Pitt sports news, football, basketball, recruiting, that's the place to do it at Panther-Lair.com. And of course, message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day at YouTube, not at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. There's so many websites I have to say, and there's two that I have to say in the midst of this video opening spiel. And somehow I just get them mixed up. I'm like, wait, which one is this? Is it the Panther-Lair Show or the Morning Pit? Is this Panther-Lair.com or youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com? I'll tell you what, if you just go check them all out and subscribe to all of them, like if you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com and go to the website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and subscribe there and read all the great Pitt content and be a part of the community there, then I wouldn't have to say any of these things. It would be you would save me a lot of time. You'd save yourself a lot of time because it would shorten these videos if I didn't have to talk about this every time. You guys need to be a part of it. Panther-Lair.com is the place to be for Pitt sports and for Pitt sports fans. Somebody in the comments made fun of my wired earphones, said I need to get wireless earbuds, but wired earphones are coming back, man. You don't know. You'll go buy your AirPods and then you'll find out that it's cool to have wired earphones again, and then you'll wish you were like me. But anyway, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, so you don't miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content. The morning Pitt videos that we put out every day of the week, Monday through Friday, these live shows on Wednesday night, any other Pitt video content we put on there, recruit videos, prospect videos, interview videos, all kinds of practice highlights, all kinds of stuff. You don't want to miss it. So go youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com and subscribe. That way you will never miss any of our video content. Let's bring in the man now. He joins us every week, except when he's on vacation. He's Jim Hammett. And Jim, I assume you can hear me. I have my volume turned up. Can I hear you?
Well, it's funny you ask, Chris.
Nice. I can. Why? Why is that funny?
Okay, well, it kind of goes back to that comment you were talking about the earphones, someone making fun of you. I had a little malfunction about an hour ago. I thought the show was going to get canceled.
You thought the show was going to get canceled because you had a malfunction?
So I was cutting the grass, and my normal headphones died, so I had to use a secondary pair.
Okay.
So the little piece right here got stuck in my ear.
Like in your ear?
In my ear. So it was a whole situation. I had to call a friend. I said, "Do you have tweezers? I need to come over. I have the show in a half hour. You need to get this out of my ear."
Wow. That's it. You know, when you started telling a story about malfunction with earphones and mowing the lawn, I mean, there were a lot of places I went of imagining what you were going to say, for anywhere from like cutting off your toe to just like you got, the earphones stuck in the mower or something. I did not think you would lose one in your ear. So I'm glad you got it out, but that wouldn't have really stopped you from doing the show. You still had your other ear. I mean, you could do like a single earbud, right? I mean, it's kind of a weird look, but it's doable. I mean,
yeah, it could have been done. I mean, I would have pressed on for the show. It's the Wednesday night Panther-Lair show.
Yeah, it is. I also appreciate your hubris in thinking that the show will be canceled because you had an earbud stuck in maybe your part of the show would be canceled. But I would, as we found when you go on vacation, the show goes on. So now if I got something stuck in my ear, then the show might be canceled then. But because I wouldn't expect you to carry this and have to deal with all the commenters and whatnot on the side. But anyway, Jim, let's see. I mean, we'll jump right into it. Big news. This is monumental news. I even missed that there was an opportunity for this to happen, but it got announced today. Carlton Carrington is wearing number 7. I totally missed this like 2 weeks ago or last month when they announced that college basketball players can now wear any number. They're not limited to numbers that start with 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, or 0. Were you aware of this? Did you catch this news? It was announced in like early June, first or second week of June.
No, I missed that. I guess I was kind of locked in on football official visits.
Right.
But yeah, when I saw 7 come out, I was really taken aback, not going to lie.
I don't, I mean, how can they, I said, are they going to have like a referee with like 7 fingers on one hand? How is he going to signal? How are they going to, but which is funny is because like they say the number anyway, they hold it up, but then they're like 25. So I don't know what the point of like, I guess just to be extra sure, but I don't know. Yeah, 7 player wearing 7. Carlton Carrington is the guy. Do you know? I didn't look at any of his high school photos. Did he wear 7 in high school or anything?
I don't, well, because I doubt high school would be allowed to wear those kind of numbers. I'm sure they didn't pass that rule yet. So yeah,
big moment for him breaking through, and he's the only one who did it too. Everybody else picked like a traditional number. I mean, everybody else is, Papa Conte is number 4, Ishmael Leggett's 5, Marlon Barnes is 11, Jalen Lowe's 15, and Zach Austin was 55 plus a walk on or 2. So Zach Austin wearing 55. I mean, he's like a wing, right? He's a small forward. I for some reason I feel like 55 is like a center's number.
I mean, I think, yeah, like you'd think Torrey Morris, but like back in the day, the Jason Williams, the old point guard, I think he was number 55 for the Sacramento Kings.
Okay.
So there's some precedent.
Yeah, maybe I was just blinded by Torrey Morris. He was such a big guy. He kind of blocked out the sun anyway. So I'm surprised. That's a deep pool, Jim. I didn't know if you were old enough to remember Torrey Morris and go back that. For next year, you're going to drop Mark McCarroll on me or somebody like that. So I don't know.
Yeah, we can go back if we want.
I don't want to push it there. I don't want to push it. So basketball wise, and actually Willat Harris, one of our commenters that I don't ever think is actually asking a question seriously. I'm going to bring his question up here because he asks, do you think Joe Toussaint was a big loss? Toussaint, the kid from West Virginia, committed to Texas Tech yesterday, right? So there was that. And then Paul Mulcahy from Rutgers committed to Washington. I think that was yesterday as well. So a couple of these sort of later stage guys in the transfer portal who've been connected to Pitt at least. Some amount of interest, some amount of contact. Toussaint, I think, visited. They both end up going other places, which sort of continues the trend of transfers Pitt has been connected to basically since like mid-April. They've all gone to other places. I think we've talked about this at some point, since we started doing this a month or two ago. With that 13th scholarship spot, I've given up on the idea that it's going to be this like game-changing guy with, 2 years of starting experience at the Power 5 level or something. I just don't think that's who they're going to get. And I'm not entirely convinced that that's what they need to get at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think in like the case of like Toussaint and Mulcahy, it's like they're just really good players. So you just, you throw out a line and see if you might catch something. I mean, I don't necessarily know if they're going to use the 13th scholarship. I really don't. So I think in those kind of situations, it's like, okay, they're pretty good players. They could probably add to our team, but obviously the competition is going to be fierce and everyone else is going to jump in too. So I don't know how much they are actively shopping for that 13th spot, but I think if the right guy comes along, like in the case of Toussaint, it's like, yeah, we'll bring him in for a visit. Let's see what happens. I mean, I think that's kind of where they're at with that.
And it sort of felt like if they were going to get an actual contributor for that last spot, it would have to be a really unique situation. Like West Virginia's program blows up, you know what I mean? And a guy almost just sort of falls into the lap like Dior Johnson did last year, just kind of falls into their lap over the summer. It's like, oh, look, now they've got this guy, just really unique circumstances. So I thought, okay, maybe there's a chance with West Virginia imploding like that. But even there, it just doesn't seem to happen. And I'm kind of with you. I wouldn't be surprised if they just carried into the season and end up giving it to, KJ Marshall or somebody or a walk-on. Do you feel like what they've got right now with 12 scholarship guys, I mean, you can always improve at a lot of positions, but I don't think there are holes, right? I don't think there's anything really missing on this roster. And I think this is a roster you can go 10 deep with and probably be competitive in the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before. I mean, I can come up with a starting 5 and maybe 2 or 3 guys that could argue to be in the starting 5 right now with what they have. So, and I think they could be good with what they have. I mean, they have guards, they have some wings, and they have a lot of size. It's one of the biggest Pitt teams ever. So, I mean, it's a pretty complete team. So obviously, if you can add a guy like Joe Toussaint out of nowhere because West Virginia's program blows up, I mean, that's something you can try. But if they really, really wanted to use the 13th scholarship on just anyone, that could have happened by now, I think. I mean, they could have added someone like that if they really wanted to. So I really think they're being selective with it. And I mean, in this day and age, you have to expect transfers. You have to expect at the end of the season that, not all 12 guys are going to come back. But as of right now, Blake Hinson is the only senior. So it's not like,
Right.
So if they go into next year and, say if everyone stays, then all you have is one scholarship to play with. So, right now it's that extra spot and Blake Hinson's spot. So
Right.
I think more often than not, Jeff Capel hasn't carried 13. I think last year they almost did.
They tried.
They tried.
Tried.
I don't know what happened to Cassius McNeely, but
yeah. Wonder where he is. Where I don't remember ever hearing anything came up with him. Oh, I misspelled it. That's not going to bring up the results.
Well, the thing with him is he's been committed to 3 or 4 different schools, and he's never actually played for anyone. I think the COVID year screwed him up, and he was at a junior college, and he transferred, and so yeah, I mean that's kind of sometimes what you find with your 13 scholarship.
Hold up, McMaster University, the McMaster Marauders, McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, has a Cassius McNeely on their roster from Scarborough, Ontario, who played 123 minutes in 2022-23 season. Averaged 20.5 minutes per game. This is what they put in his bio. 2022-23. Played 123 minutes, averaged 20.5 minutes per game. If the first thing they put in your bio is the minutes you played, that's not good, but I digress. Posted a free throw percentage of 55.6, recorded 2 offensive rebounds and 20 defensive rebounds, posted 10 assists, 7 steals, and 1 block, averaged 7.7 minutes per game. Now, earlier in his bio, it said it averaged 20.5 minutes per game. And then at the end of his bio, it says he averaged 7.7 minutes per game. So we might have found the destination of Cassius McNeely, McMaster University.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of McMaster University before?
I'm not well versed on the Canadian college basketball scene.
I wonder, I guess Canadian is there an NCAA of Canadian basketball?
I think. I think, but I don't know.
I am fascinated when I look at university athletic web pages. Because at McMaster University, for instance, when I click on their statistics page, now this is the men's basketball page, and this is a proper, university sidearm sports, university sports team program web page. When I click on statistics, it brings me to a 404 error page. But as I look at what the link would be, it's to their stats from 2019. So, McMaster, you got to get it together here, man. I'm trying to find out Cassius McNeely's stats from last year. But anyway, so that's where he ended up. I do kind of recall when he had to leave, it was a personal issue, a family issue. He was from Ontario, so it would make sense that he would then go to a college there, you know what I mean? Somewhat closer to home, I guess. But how about that? We found Cassius McNeely. Look at this. we already accomplished something. We're only 13 minutes into the show, and we found where Cassius McNeely ended up. There's probably people on the message boards right now that are like, you idiots, we found that 8 months ago. But I, for one, have never heard of McMaster University before. It's a nice touch with the birds chirping in the background, Jim. I like that.
I have the window open.
No, it's nice. I heard that. I was like, oh, I hear birds chirping in the.
I just heard a firework too, so hopefully that doesn't go.
That'll be
not
good.
Too many of those, yeah.
All right. Well, super chatters always get priority here, Jim. And super chatters are people who are kind enough to click the little $sign at the bottom of the chat screen and kick a couple bucks to the podcast. And we always get to their questions first. So Willett Harris will go to his, and he asks, "What is my favorite integer?" It's actually funny that he asked, "What is my favorite integer?" Because I was thinking about numbers earlier today in light of Carlton Carrington wearing number 7, and I started to wonder is there an iconic number that basketball kids these days wear. When I was a kid, it was 23. You wanted to be the first one to the box of jerseys so you could find the 23 jersey because that's what you wanted to wear. Everybody wanted 23. I think it's a testament to the power of 23 that LeBron, in all of his greatness, wore 23. You are, a kid who's positioned to become the greatest of all time, and you are wearing a jersey to honor someone else, somebody who you presumably think is even better than you. Is there something now? I don't watch as much NBA as I did when 23 was prevalent and prominent, but is there a number now that would be as notable as a basketball number as 23 was, or is 23 just on its own level and nothing really comes close?
Yeah, I mean, I think 23 was always the number, but like kind of growing up in like the early 2000s, like everyone was really into Allen Iverson. So I think 3 definitely carried a lot for a while. Like at least in my age bracket, I think everyone
Okay.
had the Iverson shoes, and he was the cool one around 2001, 2002.
Yeah. All right. But nothing these days, though.
I
I wonder if 23 still resonates with kids, though. I don't know if I see it as much. Like, does Pitt have a 20? Pitt doesn't have a 23 in the roster this year, do they? No. They have a 21, a 24, and a 25. But anyway, I digress. Let's get to the really important stuff, like RJ Seaman 38. He says, can't wait to hear that Frank Cignetti is not a problem and Dracovic is quite the find despite national media hammering the lack of depth on the offensive side of the ball. Can't wait to hear the Pollyanna pom-pom. Okay. There's a lot of aggression in that post, in that comment. What's interesting is the notion of the national media talking about a lack of depth on the offensive side of the ball, because Jim, you and I over the last 3 weeks have been going position by position, right? You wrote about the quarterbacks 2 weeks ago, running backs last week, and I'm writing about the receivers right now. And I've written 3 things about the receivers so far, and every single one of them has commented on, wait for it, the lack of depth at wide receiver. And I think you probably touched on it as well, at least in terms of experience depth at quarterback and running back. I've actually had points this spring and summer, Jim, where I almost feel like I need to, like, all right, not tone it down a little bit, but I think I've been very direct that I don't know what to expect from Phil Dracovic. That the last 2 years of Phil Dracovic were bad. And, 3 years ago, he was good. Well, 3 years ago, Keaton Slovis was good too. You see how that worked out for Pitt last year. I'm very, I don't want to say bearish, but I'm very much taking a wait and see approach with this offense because of A, what Frank Cignetti was able to produce with it last year, B, what Phil Dracovic has been for the last 2 seasons, C, the total lack of depth at wide receiver. I think the backs can be good. I've given up on having expectations for the tight ends. I think the offensive line will be good. But yeah, there's giant question marks. And I think we both said many times, like, this team is going to go as far as the offense takes them, and that's going to rely on Phil Dracovic. So I don't do you feel like you've been pulling punches on the offense, Jim?
No, I mean, we do a lot of different things with the other team websites, and the Florida State website, they asked me to write, a few things about Pitt for their preview series, and kind of my underlying thing was, yeah, everything might work out as long as the quarterback works out, and we have no idea if it's going to happen. So I mean, I think we've been pretty I don't know, skeptical. You're questioning it. I mean, it might work out. I mean, on the best case scenario, yeah, Cignetti and Dracovic work out and they play like they did in 2020. Worst case scenario is he plays like he did the past 2 seasons and Pitt has another lackluster offense.
Yeah. Which seems very realistic and possible. I mean, writing about the wide receivers this week, and we're going to get into the receivers in a little bit. I want to get through a few of these comments and questions, but writing about the receivers this week, like, there's Konate Mumfield, there's Bub Means, and there's Dejon Reynolds. Everybody else combined has played 3 snaps on offense. Like, not 3 receptions, not 3 games, 3 snaps. And they were 3 garbage end of the game snaps for Javonte Royal, a converted defensive back in the Miami game last year. That's a troubling situation. And I think there's a lot of reasons why that situation has come together the way it has. But it's hard for me to sit here and say, boy, I think their receivers are going to be great. I mean, I've been writing it all over the place today because I did a morning pit about it and wrote articles about, like, that's the biggest question mark on the team. I mean, aside from quarterback's always going to be the biggest question mark. But if you set that obvious one aside, I don't see another position with as many question marks and concerns and sources of consternation than receiver. I mean, to me, that's right at the top of the list.
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, they have 10 scholarship receivers and 6 of them are freshmen. I mean, we have no idea what to expect out of this group. Nothing at all. I mean, I think Bub Means and Konate Mumfield are better than what they showed last year. I think they can be productive. I'm still not really exactly sure what Pitt's going to get with Dejon Reynolds. So, I mean, there's a ton of questions about the wide receiver. And so the passing game in general is probably what's going to dictate how this season goes for Pitt. I mean, if they can get a little bit of production from the passing game, more than what they had last year, that'll be huge. But I have no idea. I have no expectations, really. I don't know.
Yeah, it's totally up in the air. I mean, we've talked about the lack of a big play wide receiver. I'm trying to find a stat I had. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Izzy Abanikanda had 7 runs of 20 yards or more, maybe 7 touchdown runs of 20 yards or more. He had 7 touchdown runs of 20 yards or more. Jared Wayne was the only wide receiver who had more than 7 20-yard passes last year. So Jared Wayne had 20-yard passes. Bub Means had 6. And that's like the drop-off. So, I mean, it's too complicated to say in some snappy way, other than to say they just didn't have many big plays. They didn't do much. And the one guy who put up most of their big plays in the passing game last year is gone. So you've got Bub Means, who had 6 20-yard passing plays last year. Kanate Mumfield had 3. And that's it. I mean, among wide receivers, Gavin Bartholomew had 4. Gavin Bartholomew had more 20-yard passing plays than Kanate Mumfield. And so did Izzy Abanikanda. There's so much to prove with this group that it's hard to say, like, yeah, I expect all of these best case scenario things to come to fruition. Some of them might. I mean, it's interesting, actually, when you compare the returning production this year versus last year after Jordan Addison left, it's actually really similar. It's like both right around 180 career receptions of, like, basically this year Mumfield, Means, and Wayne, or Mumfield, Means, and Reynolds, and last year, Wayne, Mumfield, Means, and like a couple other guys, Bradley had a couple, and Barden had a couple. So it's similar in that regard. And Jared Wayne obviously ended up having a pretty good season, but like, it's not like their passing game was all that great last year. So I don't know. It's a big question mark. I guess we just spent a long time defending ourselves that we are more negative about Pitt's passing game than RJC Man 38 assumes. Scott Eisenberg has a basketball question. Says, do we have dates for the Spain trip? And if how, can we watch those games? I was trying to do a quick search of email. Do you remember seeing dates for this? I think it's in August, right? Are they going to Spain in August? Or
it's in August, but I feel like in all of these like European trips or international trips, I don't recall the games ever really being on TV or available to watch. Like, Pitt might send out a few highlights of each game.
Right.
I think when Kentucky goes somewhere, like, those games are on ESPN too or something. I mean, like, I don't think Pitt's getting that kind of treatment. So,
right. Yeah. I just found the it's August 5th through the 14th. I don't know if they have I don't even know if they have the dates of the games they're going to play. Or even, let's see here if it even says. It doesn't even like say how many games they're going to play or when they're going to play. So they're going to be over there for 10 days, but who knows? They might still even be finalizing the schedule. But yeah, I mean, with time change, and like, these are like weird exhibition games. Like,
they're played in like YMCA's. Like,
right. Yeah. And Pitt's not flying an entire broadcast. They'll have their like media team there to produce cool videos of it after the fact. But they're not flying a broadcast team there to, air the thing on their website or anything like that. And I don't think whoever in Spain is hosting them is doing much in that regard either. So we'll get box scores that we assume are accurate, and that'll probably be about it. But those are the dates, August 5th through the 14th. Swim Boyd asks, does this year's offense fit into last year's offensive scheme, or will Cignetti have to make some changes? To me, it's about the quarterback. I think when you talk about like offensive fit and the scheme fit, I think what didn't fit was the quarterback. I don't think Keaton Slovis wasn't the right quarterback for what Frank Cignetti wanted to do, and Cignetti wasn't the right coordinator for what Slovis was good at doing. So that's to me. So if Cignetti and Djokovic mesh, and Cignetti calls the right plays for Djokovic, then yeah, it'll have a good chance of working. And if he doesn't, if that mesh doesn't happen, then it's going to be ugly again.
Yeah, I mean, I think personnel-wise, aside from the quarterback, I mean, you have the components of a good running game. I think you have a good offensive line, veteran, capable back in Hammond. And then you have like pieces like Bartholomew and Daniel Carter and Carter Johnson. So, I mean, they have the pieces to play the way they want to play. But again, it comes down to quarterback.
Yeah. Somebody suggested this on the message board. And I thought it was interesting that I forget who said it, if they just made it up themselves or if they'd read something similar, but suggested that Keaton Slovis came to Pitt because he had a reputation as a guy who needed the air raid offense to succeed. And he wanted to break that reputation. He wanted to show that he could play in a pro style offense. He wanted to show that he could make reads and go through progressions and that kind of thing. And I thought that was, and then obviously if that was really his goal, he failed in that regard. But I thought that was an interesting concept. I don't remember if Keaton never really said something like that. He might have, and I just forgot about it. But it is an interesting concept to think about. Ultimately, like, I don't care if guys are getting developed for the NFL, right? Like if I'm a Pitt fan, all I want to see is the coordinator call an offense that fits what the quarterback does well, so that the quarterback can succeed, the offense can succeed, and the team can succeed, right? Like I don't care if you're just calling some gimmicky one read offense, your air raid, whatever it is, just go win games. Like just go out, score a bunch of points, and win games. I don't really care if that makes you a good NFL prospect or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the case of Slovis, I mean, they had hopes of doing all these things on offense, and they kind of realized it wasn't going to work with him, and they had a pretty good running back, and they just kind of defaulted to that. I mean, I don't think that was the ultimate plan all along. It just, that's what kind of developed. And
Oh, no. Did Jim freeze or did I? Jim, are you there?
I'm there. I might.
Oh, there you are. I think Jim might have froze. Well, we might have lost the last bit of insight there, but I think we got the general idea of what you were saying. Stephen Keel says, how's this class trending now with all those 3 stars? Maybe a top 30 class. I feel like Stephen is having taking a bit of a tone there. I feel like maybe a bit sarcastic. You know what's funny about this football recruiting thing right now is like, if the success that they had early in the month, right? If all the guys that they got committed early in the month, if that all happened in the final 2 weeks of June, like if you just took the first 2 weeks of June and the last 2 weeks of June and flipped them, how different would the perspective be? Like how different because people are talking about how Pitt's recruiting has fallen. It really slipped. It's gone down the drain. They had so much momentum. They've lost all that momentum. And like, it's timing, right? Like if you flip those 2 weeks, people will be like, oh, they had such a great finish to June. They got a lot of momentum, right? Or am I misreading this?
No, I think a lot of it is the perception of how it played out throughout the month. But I mean, someone, made a comment on the message board the other day. It's like, well, it's just going to be like any old other recruiting class. Like, I'm like, well, signing day was tomorrow. It'd be Pratt Narduzzi's best recruiting class. They're still sitting on 2 outstanding Pat signals that would probably bump the class up a little bit more. They have more 4 stars this year than they did the past 2 years combined. So it doesn't feel like a normal class. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm too close to it.
And again, I think they're winning like good recruiting battles. Like, oh, look at all those 3 stars. Yeah, go look at Caleb Holmes. You know what I mean? Go look at Jeremiah Marcelin. You know what I mean? Look at even like a Jules Goff. I think they're winning good battles. They're getting good recruits. They've got the 3 4 stars already. We think they've got a good chance to add to that number. I've said a few times I think they'll finish with 6. I guess what always gets me, and this gets me whether it's like, over the course of a month of recruiting, or it's like series to series in a game, or quarter to quarter in a game, is this just like instant reaction, live on the moment, like, oh, there was an incomplete pass, the quarterback stinks, and the coordinator's calling terrible plays, and this whole thing is a disaster, and then they complete a pass, and it's all, it's so up and down. Like, relax. Like if they finish with 6 4-star recruits in the class, it'll be the most they've ever signed. It'll be the highest rated class that Narduzzi's ever had. And we'll look back and be like, remember when everybody was talking about how the recruiting hit a wall? And I don't know, take a look at the big picture sometimes. Yeah, they've missed on some guys, but they've also, I would contend this was probably the best month of visitors they've had, over the past like 8 years, with the kids that came to campus, the stars, the rankings, and all of that. And when you kind of work in that area, when you're in that territory, you're going to miss on some of those guys because they're high priority prospects for a lot of schools, not just you. And it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you lost all the momentum you've had. I think they still have the momentum they had entering June. I think they still have the momentum they had at mid-June. All those things that we talked about, 20 wins and ACC championship and Sun Bowl, and all, that's all still in play. And the class still, to me, looks really good. But what did RJC man 38 call me, a Pollyanna pom-poms? So I mean, maybe that's my shortcoming, I guess. I don't know.
But I mean, I look at it, they hosted 38 visitors, and there are 7 guys that are uncommitted. And we know that 2 of them are actually committed to Pitt. Of those 7 guys, 6 of them are 4 stars. So the chances are they're at least getting 1, maybe 2 4 stars. And a couple of those guys might decide and pick Pitt. So again, like, I don't know, some patience maybe.
Patience would be good. Patience is a good thing to have when it comes to your fitness. Did you know that, Jim? Your health and your wellness, nutrition. You got to be patient with your gains. And I say gains with a Z at the end because it's cooler that way. It's kind of like hard, like gains. You know who knows about gains?
Chris Gates.
He does. I wish Chris spelled his last name with a Z. Gatez. That would be awesome. He doesn't, and you don't get the spelling wrong because you need to be able to go to his website, chrisgatesfitness.com. It's Gates, not Z, so get that right. But anyway, as everybody who watches the show knows, the Panther-Lair Live Show, it's sponsored by Chris Gates Fitness. Chris, he's an online fitness coach from Pittsburgh, a huge Pitt fan, and he's planning something really cool in August. Chris is actually launching his one-on-one online fitness training camp on August 7th. And it's your opportunity to get your own customized, personalized training and nutrition program to reach your health and fitness goals. Now, you'll work with Chris to create a program tailored to you, and Chris will be there every step of the way to guide and support you through the process. When you join Chris's training camp, you'll have the opportunity to participate in monthly challenges that help you build healthy habits, and Chris will pick winners each month to receive free workout supplements, home gym equipment, and more. And just like how Pitt shows up to training camp on the south side to start getting in shape and build their game plan for the season, you'll work with Chris to map out a strategy that helps you make progress during a time of year where people tend to see their health and fitness go in the wrong direction. Football season, tailgating, road trips, the holidays, and more make fall a really challenging time to take steps forward. But by signing up for Chris's training camp, you'll commit to enjoying all of those aspects of fall in a way that supports your goals. And this program is not only about losing body fat or building muscle, it's about combining all of these things into one program that pushes you in the right direction and helps you establish healthy, sustainable habits that serve you well for a lifetime. So don't forget the date. Chris Gates Fitness Training Camp opens August 7th, and Panther-Lair listeners get 75% off their first month of training camp as well. So stay tuned to this podcast for more details and go to chrisgatesfitness.com to learn more. chrisgatesfitness.com. I wonder if Chris has ever considered adding a Z to the end of his name, like maybe like legally changing it or having a stage name. Because, wouldn't it look cool? Actually, he should just change it to Chris Gaines. But not like Chris Gaines, the Garth Brooks, like, do you remember this when Garth Brooks released the rock and roll album, an alternative alt rock album in the 1990s? And he called himself Chris Gaines. He created an alter ego. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about here, Jim?
No.
Seriously?
This is news to me.
Yeah, that's rough. Well, Garth Brooks, the country music star at the height of his stardom, like selling billions of records, created an alter ego alternative rock persona and released an album. He called it Chris Gaines, but it was Gaines. Our Chris Gates should change his last name or his stage name to Gaines, Gainz. I think that would be cool. He could get a tattoo of it. Anyway, I'll take that up with Chris. You don't have anything to say about it. Voodoo IPA says, my uncle cut off part of a big toe as a teenager when cutting grass in sandals. So people who tuned in late to the show might have missed that Jim survived a harrowing incident while mowing the lawn today where his earbud got stuck in his ear. Not quite as traumatic as Voodoo IPA's uncle cutting off part of his big toe while cutting grass in sandals. But let's be honest, man, who cuts grass in sandals? That's just asking for trouble. Like, there's a giant rotating blade. Why would you have open-toed shoes?
Yeah, I used to work for landscaping and cut grass years ago, and someone had an incident, and the 1 yard where it happened, we just called it toe yard.
Jeez. Clever. That's a clever pun. I like that. That's good. That's good. That's better than Chris Gaines. Wolf HD says, what's the current outlook on Trevor Jackson? It's been quiet as of late. So Trevor Jackson, the Pitt quarterback target from Florida, I think his recruiting interest picked up after the Elite 11 when he had a good performance out there at the Elite 11 finals. I think his recruiting interest picked up a little bit. I think UCLA got involved. He took the official visit to Texas A&M. I think that was after the Elite 11. I might have that mixed up. But it has been quiet. I haven't heard much back from him. Used to have pretty good communication with him, but he's sort of gone quiet. I think he's probably getting hit up a lot. And then we've talked about Julian Duggar, the Penn Hills quarterback, right? And kind of how he emerged. I think we talked about that maybe last week or the week before. Have you heard anything new on the quarterback situation? Any new thoughts there, Jim?
Not really. I mean, I think Pitt and Texas A&M were his two visits. Obviously, Missouri was in it until they got their quarterback, and Miami's been sniffing around a little bit too. And what UCLA offered him in June. So I think right now he has a lot of different opportunities, and I think he's just exploring them. I think Pitt's still an option. I think Pitt would still really like to have him, but I don't know if he's really settling in on making a decision anytime soon.
Yeah, seems like he might drag it out since he's got some options. And did he take 3 official visits? No, just 2. Just the Pitt and A&M visits. I couldn't remember if he snuck something else in there. Josh Newark has a basketball player who wears 55. Eli Brooks from Michigan. So, they're coming out of the woodwork now. Daniel Kulikowski, who actually gave us a super sticker. There he is. Way to go, Daniel. Daniel says, what realistically can Pitt do to improve the game day environment, or is it strictly dependent on attendance? Can we at least agree a low-hanging fruit is to find an alternative to Sweet Caroline? I don't think Sweet Caroline hurts the environment. Every time it starts, people get excited. For as much as we all make fun of it, for as much as we all complain about it, and it's the butt of everyone's jokes, for however many thousands of people were in the stadium, they all stand up, they all sway, and they all sing along to it. So I think I told this story. I was at a elementary school band concert a couple months ago. Did I tell this story? I forget, but they played Sweet Caroline, and afterward they played it again, and the band director said all the adults should sing along and all this stuff. And I swear I heard people doing the Let's Go Pitt thing in the middle of it. This is in Mount Lebanon, where there's a decent amount of Pitt fans, but there's plenty of Penn State and West Virginia as well. I don't think Sweet Caroline has any. I mean, my point is that I think people actually do get into it and enjoy it. Improving the game day environment, you win, you get good games on the schedule. That's kind of it, unless you want to tarp and funnel everybody down to the lower bowl. I mean, I don't know. Are there any other solutions?
I mean, I think we're inside, and we can't really always hear what's going on. But it does sound like, even though Pitt games aren't packed, it does sound loud when the other team's on offense. I think Pitt moving the student section the whole way across the end zone, I think that has been a big healthy environment.
Yeah, I agree. I do. I think there's merit in. I think Heather Lyke used the phrase right sizing the stadium. I mean, I think tarping a few sections in that upper deck in the end zone, it's not the worst idea, just to push people in, make them a little more condensed. You remember with the Clemson game in 21, there was that big push to sell out the lower bowl and then sell out key sections. And I think that made a difference. There were empty seats in that game, but you had so many people compacted into that lower bowl and the sideline upper levels that, I mean, I think that can make a difference. I think if you need to selectively sort of choose where people can sit, basically, and eliminate some of the sections as options, except for, when it's West Virginia or Penn State or somebody that's going to actually sell those tickets, that you're going to sell that many tickets to those places. But otherwise, I mean, I don't think tarping should be dismissed out of hand. I mean, I think it can be done tastefully, and I think it can be done effectively.
I think it can be too. I mean, there's always a rumor. I think someone said Pat Narduzzi doesn't want it. I don't know where he stands on tarping, but I don't think it's a bad idea. At least a couple of those upper corner sections, just kind of bring it down a little bit. But like I said, I do think the environment or the students, I think they've been more into the game lately. So I think moving the students is a good segue into possibly tarping. You could see how much of a difference they make being that close to the field.
I think Narduzzi could be talked into it. I think when that came out a few years ago, I think part of the problem was if you remember, Heather Lyke had these public comments about it. Do you remember this? She talked about right sizing the stadium and tarps and stuff like this, but she said it at some it wasn't even an alumni gathering. It was somewhere in Ohio, some not private event, but it was some kind of event. And she just sort of spoke off the cuff, and someone took it as an on the record comment. And I mean, I think she's standing there at a microphone, at a podium. So it's on the record, and printed it. And that was the first Narduzzi heard of it. Right. So he gets blindsided by something on the internet. And Pat, I know Pat. If all of a sudden your AD is out there talking about putting up tarps, and you're the first you're hearing about it, she's in Youngstown or Dayton or someplace like that, and you hear about it from a report on the internet, what's Pat Narduzzi's reaction to that going to be? I think he could be convinced that it's a good idea, but not that way. Not where they're getting sprung on him. And so, and not only are you not going to convince him in that manner, you're going to actually get him to go the other way, because he's going to be so angry that it comes out that way that, you know what I'm saying? Like he's going to be even more opposed to it. So I think he could be convinced that it's a worthwhile venture, and it could be productive and effective and have a positive impact on his recruiting, if nothing else, and the game day atmosphere as well. But it's going to take a little more nuance than how that went down. So Daniel, we don't have any answers for you. Win games and schedule attractive opponents, but sometimes those two don't always go hand in hand. Wolf HD, what is your favorite freshman wide receiver coming in this year, and which freshman receiver do you think has the biggest in the future, not this season? Go ahead, Jim. I'll let you take first stab at that.
I was always pretty high on Kenny Johnson. I thought he could just be a really big playmaker. And I think he might be, like, for the latter of that question, like maybe brightest future of his career. So, I mean, guys that could impact this season, I mean, I think you're looking at maybe Izzy Polk, just because he was here and, he got a little bit of feel for it. So I don't know. I mean, I like this all good. It's wide receiver week. We've been talking about wide receivers. We're still trying to kind of figure it out ourselves, because there's a lot of question marks there.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I like Johnson a lot. I think Lamar Seymour can be really good. I think Izzy Polk impressed some people this spring. I think he surprised the coaches a little bit. Maybe he was a little bit further along than they expected him to be. I think long term, it's still either Johnson or Seymour, personally. Some of them are going to play. I think we've talked about this a bunch of times. I mean, some of them are going to. Oh yeah, last week I think we were talking about how many guys have redshirted and which guys did or didn't redshirt. And I think we're pretty much in agreement. There's going to be at least one, if not two, and maybe more wide receivers who don't redshirt because they're just going to need them. History question here. I'll test your knowledge. RJ Seaman 38. How many years has Pitt had a full roster at the end of the season under Jeff Capel? I'm scanning the internet. You tell me your thoughts while I try and do a quick count here.
What does that mean?
Like nobody transfers by the end, I guess, or gets kicked off the team. I don't know.
I'm guessing 0.
9, 10, 11. Oh, geez. Did he only have 11 scholarship players the first year? I'm only counting like 11 guys. Wow. Yeah, I mean,
it's just kind of the nature of college basketball. I mean, does anyone have a full roster at the end of the year anymore?
5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, darn it. I got to 12 in his second year. I was like, oh, maybe this is. I mean, they were close last year. I mean, depending on how you want to count John Hughley's situation. I mean, he wasn't with the team. He wasn't around the team, but I mean, he was still on scholarship. I mean, he was still on scholarship. Dior was still on scholarship. So, I mean, they were listed on the online roster.
Yeah.
Does that count? 5, 6, 7. Now I'm counting again. 8. Oh, geez. I was only like 8 in that year. COVID year. That was really bad. They did not play with many guys. 1, 2. Well, how many times? I mean, I guess how many times have they had guys transfer before the end of the season? The COVID year, I guess, right? Yeah. And I mean, you could say Hughley as well, but I but otherwise, I mean, like Trey McGowan's made it to the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he so Xavier Johnson and Audi's Tony left. I guess Capel hasn't. I mean, the question here is about the end of the season, but I mean, most of these seasons he didn't enter the year with a full roster, right? So I guess that's kind of part of it too, is that I don't know if there were any years that he actually had 13 on scholarship at the start of the year. So it's I guess kind of a moot point. You could always fill in walk-ons if you really wanted to get to 13. So I don't know what point we're even driving at with that question. Let's see. Hide that comment. Here, actually, I wanted to get into this. Josh Newark says, regarding the earlier tweet about Jordan Addison being Pitt's second best ever wide receiver, rank Addison, Boyd, Baldwin, and Antonio Bryant for a Pitt all-time top 5 wide receivers. Obviously, Larry Fitzgerald is number 1. So I asked this on Twitter today. I said, is Jordan Addison Pitt's number 2 all-time wide receiver? And I put it up as a poll question. I said, if not, who is? As of right now, there's about 1,900 votes on the poll question with 12 hours left. 53.6% say yes, Addison is the second best receiver in Pitt history. 46.4% say no, and there are 122 replies of people commenting others. Most other people either said Tyler Boyd or Antonio Bryant. For the most part, is Addison number 2 for you? I mean, we don't even have to discuss number 1, but is Addison number 2 for you?
I mean, that 2021 season is probably the best, outside of Larry's like near Heisman. I mean, Addison had 100 catches and his yardage was second only to Larry.
Yeah.
And like his 100 catches, that's the Pitt all-time single season record. I mean, he was great. I mean, he won the Litnikoff. So, yeah, I mean, for me, he probably is number 2. But I mean, I could be talked into Tyler Boyd just because his overall, I think he had 3 seasons of 80-plus catches. I mean, he was really, really good from the start. I mean, his first game was that Florida State game, and he was making like diving catches. Like, everyone like, who is this guy?
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I could be talked into either one, but I mean, Jordan Addison's 2021 season might just separate him because that was just really, really special.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the all-time great seasons by a Pitt receiver and really by a Pitt player. He finished, he played 2 years like Larry Fitzgerald did. He had 160 catches. Fitzgerald had 161. Fitzgerald had about 400 more yards and obviously 13 more receiving touchdowns. But I mean, his numbers are somewhat comparable to Larry Fitzgerald. There's a decent chance if Jordan Addison comes back to Pitt for a third season, he would have needed, I think, 95 catches and 1,020 or 1,030 yards to pass Tyler Boyd for the all-time career lead in receptions and receiving yards. It's debatable if he would have gotten those numbers in Frank Cignetti's offense, but Jared Wayne put up a 1,000-yard season in that offense. I think Jordan Addison probably could have done it. Player to player, I think Boyd is probably a better player than Addison. But that 1 year was so above and beyond. Now, there's something to be said, too, that he had a first-round draft pick at quarterback throwing to him. And, he had an offensive coordinator who called plays in such a way that Maurice French had 96 receptions in a single season. So that's part of it as well, but he was just really, really good that year. It's like player to player, if you told me I could have either one of those guys, I would probably take Boyd. He was a little bit bigger, maybe, probably a little more athletic, a little faster. But it's not a huge separation. It's not a big difference between those two.
No, I agree with that. And I mean, I guess to Boyd's credit, because you mentioned Kenny Pickett. I mean, he went Tom Savage, Chad Boydick,
Nate Peterman.
Yeah, so he had 3 quarterbacks in 3 years, and he still put up like 80 catches in all of them. So yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, and if we want to talk about, well, what would Addison do with Cignetti? I mean, Boyd's first 2 years were with Paul Christ and Joe Rudolph, and he caught 163 passes in those 2 seasons combined. So, the only thing, one big separator is the touchdown passes. They both finished with 21 career touchdown receptions. Boyd had 7, 8, and 6, and Addison had 17 in 1 year. I mean, he was just exceptional. Now, what about Antonio Bryant? Where does Antonio Bryant fall on this spectrum for you?
Like all time? I mean,
in relation to those two guys, in relation to Boyd and Addison.
I mean, that's close because if you win the Biletnikoff, I mean, that's pretty legit. So, I mean, that's kind of stepping out beyond me. It's like a little bit, I was a little bit too young to really appreciate Antonio Bryant, but like, I knew he was good. Like him and Lateef Grimm were I think the receiving tandem those years. And I mean, you win a Biletnikoff. I mean, that's doing something. And it was kind of a different time in college football too. I mean, you weren't throwing the ball as much as well.
Well, we always used to joke at that time that the play calls were like Antonio Bryant deep left, Antonio Bryant deep middle, Antonio Bryant, and it was just like throw it up and let Antonio go under. I mean, he was exceptional. It was almost sort of his bad luck that he was followed by maybe the greatest receiver. I mean, certainly the greatest receiver in Pitt history, and maybe the greatest receiver in NFL history. I think that's an argument for another day, but it was kind of his bad luck to be followed up by that. And it overshadowed how good he was, just like he overshadowed how good Lateef Grimm was. Larry Fitzgerald overshadowed how good he was. This is an interesting question here. Will Z says, Chris, this is the most unknown wide receiver room since when? Maybe thinking 2011. I'll have to go back and look at the 2011 roster, but let me read to you the 2016 roster, the year after Boyd left. And I'll just read, I mean, they're on Pitt's website in numerical order. So by jersey number: Trey Tipton, Aaron Matthews, Quadri Henderson, Ruben Flowers, Dantes Ford, Maurice French, walk on, Zach Challingsworth, Rafael Rougeau Lopes, and Jester Weah. Now, a few of those guys had big years in 2016, but entering 2016, I don't think there were any expectations for any of them. I mean, that year, it was sort of similar. Like, wow, they just lost this generational wide receiver. How are they going to replace him? That year, and it ended up being great for a lot of reasons and kind of in different ways than maybe traditionally you would think of with receivers. But I would say that was a year where you looked at it like, whew, this might get ugly here.
Well, I just even remember with Jester Weah is like, he was always billed as this like great athlete, but could never get on the field. And like, he was going into the season as the number one receiver. So that was a pretty big question mark, I would say.
Yeah. How about this? So this is a little preview for tomorrow. You did with the quarterbacks. You did with the quarterbacks and the running backs. I'm doing it with the receivers. We have a different theme each day, and tomorrow's theme is the top 5 of the Narduzzi era. And I think I told you before the show that we were going to talk about this, and now we have like 9 minutes left. So we won't really go through our full top 5s. Maybe we will, but I put Jester Weah. I don't know if I want to give this up. I want people to read the article or read it tomorrow, but I put him at number 3 behind Boyd and Addison. Not in that order. I put Addison number 1, but Jester Weah. And again, this is sort of a one season thing, but like 10 touchdowns. There's only like 5 receivers in Pitt history that have had double-digit touchdown receptions. And like, it's like Larry Fitzgerald, Antonio Bryant, Jordan Addison, and Greg Lee are the other 4. And Jester Weah. Jester Weah led like all Power 5. I looked on Pro Football Focus, all Power 5 receivers who had at least 60 targets. And he number 1 in yards per catch at 24.2 yards per catch. And he was one of 2 receivers in the nation who averaged more than 10 yards after the catch per reception. 21 of his 36 catches gained at least 15 yards, and 13 of his 36 receptions gained at least 25 yards. I'm gonna stop after this. He had 13 catches on first down. They averaged 30 yards per reception. I mean, the guy was just a big play, and he didn't catch every pass. I think he had like a 60% catch rate. I think he had 60 targets and like 36 receptions. But God, he just made big play after big play after big play. And we all talk about Quadri Henderson that year. We talk about James Conner that year. Jester Weah was a 10 touchdown guy on that team.
Yeah, I mean, Weah was great. I mean, like, I think like the one like moment of his career I will always remember, and it's not for anything good. It was like whenever he had the big catch against Virginia Tech down to like the 3, then like they tried to run the ball 4 times in a row and got stuffed. But like that's the play I remember. It's like, dude, just run a little bit faster and you score a touchdown, and it just didn't happen. So
for the track guy, well, again, but you're going to 2017, Jim. I was talking about 2016. 2016 Jester Weah is when he was. So to the question then, your top 5 receivers of the Narduzzi era.
Okay. So I had Jester Weah 5.
Okay.
I had Maurice French 4. I had Jared Wayne 3.
Okay.
Tyler Boyd, then Jordan Addison.
Okay. So you and I just flipped Weah and Wayne because I had Wayne 4 and French 5. I actually wondered if I should put Quadri Henderson over Maurice French just for, I mean, French had 96 catches that last year with that, in the first Whipple year. But again, for 1 year, Henderson was so dynamic. It just wasn't as a wide receiver. I mean, he wasn't really catching passes, but he scored 10 touchdowns on that team as well. I debated it, but it's interesting how much of a drop off there is because, like, even if you don't, let's say Henderson is maybe 6 or somewhere around there. Who's after that? Like Taysier Mack, like Rafael Rougeau Lopes. I mean, where do you go after that top 5 or 6?
I mean, I think it is Taysier Mack. I looked at like Pitt's all-time career receptions leaders, and Taysier Mack is 11th.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean, I think Jared Wayne's 10th and French is 9th. So like they're all like right there, but like you wouldn't like expect that out of Taysier Mack. But I think I'm trying to think what season he was kind of like the main guy. It was probably 2019.
Yeah, I think 19. Yeah. Yeah, he had a good. He was hurt and he was inconsistent, but first of all, I feel like he was at Pitt for like 7 years. So that helped him put up like some numbers, but he was a pretty consistent. I think he made some big plays in 18 when they won the Coastal. I think the 19 game, I think he had a huge catch against Penn State in the game up there, if I recall, to help them have a chance to. He was a good, reliable player, but it kind of like, I don't know.
He had some great catches. He had that Penn State catch. He had the catch in the bowl game in Detroit, like that, like kind of like jumped over the defender. That was a good one.
Yeah.
That Louisville game, he almost got tackled. Everyone thought he was down, and he got up and ran in. That was like the crowdless 2020 year.
That's right.
He had a really cool catch. Taysier Mack was a little underrated. I mean, he did have some drops, but he was actually a pretty good player.
I think so too. Let's see what else we have here in the last few minutes. Hog Muncher wants to know, are there any updates on Malcolm Epps? Any chance he's a passing target savior for the year? I mean, he didn't really do much of that at USC. I think he was expected to be that. Because was he at Texas before USC? Am I remembering that right? Did he?
Yeah.
Okay. But it was like every year it was like, oh, this guy looks like $1 million. He's going to be like a monster. He's going to have a breakout season. And then it just never happened for him. So I don't know. What kind of expectations do you have for Malcolm Epps in this offense this season?
I mean, I think, as a recruit, I think he was listed as a wide receiver initially. I think he went to Texas to play receiver. So I think there's some element there that could help him. And I think part of it at USC is they didn't really have a tight end friendly offense. I mean, they were kind of spreading it out, and they had Jordan Addison and other guys that could really spread the ball around to. So this is probably a more tight end friendly offense. So this is his chance to maybe make an impact. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be like a Lucas Kroll and be like a huge part of the offense, but he's going to be on the field. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. It'll be, I guess the most interesting thing will be if he can play a role that allows Gavin Bartholomew to be, I mean, we've talked about it a million times and it's on the boards all the time, to be more in that kind of H-back role he was in 2 years ago, where he was actually really effective. Had, I think 7 fewer targets than he had last year and 7 more receptions than he had last year. I just looked that number up. I was like, oh, that's pretty remarkable. But to be fair, 2 years ago, he caught like 28 out of 29 passes or something like that. So it was kind of, but all of his passes, his average depth of target was 1.8 yards down the field. So it was just quick, little easy stuff in the flat to make his life easy. And he ended up making a bunch of plays. So I don't know. I think they need to find that kind of role for him again. But if you're going to do that, you need somebody else to play that other role. You need somebody else to be that inline tight end, to line up like Krull did, or play in some fashion like that. And I don't know. I don't know if Malcolm Epps can be that. I don't think Carter Johnson can be that guy. He strikes me as another kind of H-back type working out of the backfield. So I don't know. Jake Renda. I mean, do you think we're going to see any of those other guys on the field? Is it surprising? I mean, I guess they got a tight end transfer, but is it surprising that it didn't really seem like more of a priority? They didn't get him until like late spring.
Yeah, it was definitely a late ad, and it was kind of just one of those like, oh, like he's available, let's grab him, But yeah, you would think that would have been one of those positions they went after right away, and it wasn't. So I mean, I think Gavin Bartholomew can be a good player. There's something there. Not to say he's not a good player. I mean, I think he could be more productive is what I'm saying. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I agree. All right. I think that's about it. We're at 9:30 here, Jim. So we are going to wrap it up. We'll be back for another one next Wednesday. We thanks to everybody who joined this week. It's a lot of fun taking all the comments and questions. And and the super chatters and super stickers and all of those things. Jim, it's been fun watching the light, like the sun go down behind you. And when we first started, the birds were chirping and it was light out back there. And now it's all dark. And you need some curtains, man, some blinds or something.
I got these things.
Oh, wow. The indoor shutters. Okay.
Yeah.
Or are you sitting outside?
No, I'm inside right now.
Okay. Indoor shutter. That's unique. That's a Johnstown thing, I think. Indoor shutters.
They were at the house when I bought it, so
I like it. Well, you need privacy, so I guess that's good to have. All right. Well, Jim, thank you. Thanks everybody for tuning in this week. Stay tuned to the website, Panther-Lair.com, and we'll have we'll have the morning pit tomorrow, and then we'll be back Wednesday night for another live show. So hopefully you can tune in then. Till then, have a great week, great weekend. We'll talk to you next Wednesday. Thanks.